Hi there, welcome to today's episode of the Hospitable Hosts podcast. Today we're talking to Grace Gudenkauf, a real estate investor who took a leap of faith in 2021, leaving her engineering career to build a thriving rental business, including short, mid, and long-term rentals. She's also the co-founder of Women Invest in Real Estate, helping to empower others to take on their real estate journey. If you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to like and share. Thanks. Hey Grace, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Cool. Glad to finally have you on. We've obviously done a bit of work with Women Invest in Real Estate before. It's fantastic to have you on the podcast.
Yay.
Sweet. Really just wanted to get straight into it and get a bit of background on you, Grace. So obviously, key topic for us today is you going from engineer to empire builder. So how comes 2021 you were in, a nice stable engineering job and decided to go full time into real estate? What kind of, sparked that leap of faith?
It was a leap of faith. So good job using that term. I want to be very clear that I was not making the money I was making with my real estate. It was definitely a risk. But growing up, I always knew I wanted to own a business or do something in the entrepreneurship realm, but I never had any clue what it would be. And so when real estate came to me and I started to delve into it in 2020, 2021, I also was supposed to move all the way to California for my job in the middle of COVID. And so I took a really good hard look at my life and I was like, I think this is the best time it's ever going to be to take a risk. I'm taking a risk either way. I'm either going to move 5 states away or I'm going to do this real estate thing and stay home. And I actually did a bunch of what people now call fear setting. I didn't know what it was called at the time, but I looked at my worst case scenario and I was like, I can handle that. So let's do it. Let's give it a try.
That's cool. That's very exciting. Fast forward and we're jumping over many years here, but, now you're at 25 plus properties. I'm not sure the exact number. Am I right in saying that they're all based in Iowa and you're based in Arizona?
Yep. My entire portfolio is within a 15-minute radius in eastern Iowa, where I was born, raised, and lived until 2 years ago. And I live in Tucson now.
Wow, amazing. And tell us a bit more maybe about your portfolio. It's not just short-term rental. There's a little bit of mid-term and long-term in there as well.
It actually is mostly midterm with a little bit of the other sprinkled in, but I started as a DIY investor in my own backyard. I never knew you could invest anywhere besides where you lived. And my fiance is very, very handy. So we started doing that together with our own hands. And we did that for about 2 years, built up a lot of rentals. I have to also point out that the area I'm in is incredibly inexpensive. I'm buying houses for $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, which is crazy. And I was able to tap into creative financing, using other people's money, the BIIRE method, and I just kept buying. And I really figured out, okay, I really know this market. There's not a ton of competition. It's not that crazy hard to figure out kind of the hack of getting more and more rentals. So I kept doing that. And I have all single family and small multifamily.
Nice. And how comes the decision around focusing on midterm?
That came heavily from my business partner with WIIRE, Amelia McGee. She had bought this 11 unit in Des Moines, Iowa, 4 years ago and started putting each individual unit as it turned over on Furnish Finder as a midterm rental, a furnished 90-day stay. And I thought, I should do that. I don't think that people here in my market really do that. It was 2 hours away. 2 hours away in a different city. And so I bought 2 fourplexes right next door to each other. And one was empty when I bought it. So I tried just that one. I spent like $3,000 on that one to see if this, furnished rental would work. And it did. I got bombarded with requests. So then I did the next one. And I just kept doing that and really had a pulse on the demand that I felt from Furnish Finder and Airbnb until I had 12 or 13 midterm rentals. And then I was like, all right, I feel really good. I think the midterm rental craze is at its peak. So I've stopped buying midterms, but I still operate 12 or 13 of them.
Wow. Okay, cool. And then you've obviously said that you're very hands-on. So, I know you're self-managing. Um, what are some of the challenges that you've found with doing that and doing it all yourself?
When I first started, self managing was so emotional. And it can be because you've bought this super expensive asset that could change your life, and you have
Mm,
somebody living there who might not respect it or might also have their emotions involved. And so I really had to learn to have systems and boundaries and see red flags and call them out and really tackle issues before they become bigger issues. But I think that everybody should at least learn to self manage so you're not dependent on a third party manager who takes 10% and makes your
yeah.
rentals their last priority. But I've learned so much. And in fact, I wouldn't have it any other way. And I'm sure we'll get into this, but I even decided to hire a manager internally to help me self manage. And I would be
Mm.
very surprised if I ever turn to an actual third party in the future.
Amazing, right? So obviously, you kind of mentioned there the 10%, sometimes higher, sometimes lower, I guess, to kind of balance it out. What are some of the other reasons why you wouldn't want someone else managing your property? What are some of the drawbacks in your opinion?
I think that real estate is an incredible asset, and you should be the number one person in charge and the number one person caring about your property at all times. A lot of people tend to hand over management to a third party company and think,
Mm.
like, oh, I'll set it and forget it. And bad things still happen. You still have bad tenants. The other thing is, you're able to give so much more quality control and care to your property and be more in control of your property when you self manage it because it's your number one priority. When you go to a property management company, it's not the number one priority. Very, very rarely, when talk at conferences or give presentations and I ask
Yeah.
people, do you love your property manager? There's always like one person who's like, I actually have a great one. The rest roll their eyes and they sigh. And it's because they operate on such slim margins that they have to have hundreds of properties. And when they have hundreds of properties, you simply cannot be their number one priority. So basically, why buy this asset worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe millions, depending on your market, and then just flip the management over to some random corporate company that you don't know? I think that you need to be the number one protector, supporter, and manager of your assets.
Nice. Love that. So obviously self-managing as well. I assume you're using a bunch of tools to help you do that. I know Hospitable is one of them, but how have tools like Hospitable and others helped you to kind of run your own properties?
3 years ago, when I started my midterms, Hospitable was like the first platform I used to manage turnovers and cleaners and even tasks. But when it also comes to long term rentals, I'm using Tenant Cloud, and that is managing all of my long term rentals in terms of maintenance, communication, and applications. But a few other things I always teach people that might not come to mind. And I'm a big proponent of being the CEO of your business, the CEO of your portfolio. I tell people you are all CEOs, whether or not you act like it. You might also be the CEO and the cleaner, which I was for 2 years. But you need to look at things like QuickBooks and Google Drive and other pieces of technology that keep your business systemized and organized so that you can focus on making money in your business, not chasing down a receipt or a document or taking 2 weeks to get back to your tenant on a maintenance request. And so that tenant leaves even though they were a great tenant. So I'm really big on, obviously, you need to use the real estate specific things, Hospitable, Tenant Cloud, but you also need to get yourself organized in other ways and really be the CEO of your business.
Nice, cool. So earlier you kind of mentioned hiring your own kind of manager internally. Maybe tell us a bit more about how you use a team. Like what is your team made up of? Is it just that one person? And how you kind of hired that person. How did you go about finding the right person for the role?
My very first hire was 10 hours a week. It was super scary, but I realized I have so much paperwork and listing and communication and coordination that I could really hire out so I could focus on other things. I run two businesses. I have my real estate, Good Morning Investments, and I have WIIRE. So I'm busy.
Mhm.
So I hired her. She was with me for like a year. She was incredible. And that was the first time I was like, oh my gosh, they say that hiring allows you to grow your business. And I really actually got to see it happen in real life. After she parted ways, she had a really great job and ended up leaving this part-time thing just because she couldn't do it anymore. I decided I'm going to flip this position from 10 hours a week to a full-time person. And not only are they going to manage my rentals, they're going to help me manage my flips and all my renovations. And that person has now been with me for over a year. And the first few months, we did a flip in like 60 days from close to close and cleared like 25,000. And that was when I was like, holy crap, I could not have done that on my own. I'm now living in Arizona. I need somebody there. And so that also opened my eyes to, wow, when you hire the right people, they can go and take care of things so you don't have to stress about it or worry about it or do it. And you can continue to grow your business and focus on the things that you're actually good at. I'm not a good project manager. I don't want to be project managing. I'm also not great with talking to tenants. I don't want to be the one that has to talk to tenants. So building a team is essential. And for anybody listening, it doesn't have to be somebody full-time. It can be a 5 hours a week person. It could be a bookkeeper even, or a cleaner if you're still cleaning. That is huge. Any way you can delegate, I highly recommend.
Nice. I love it. And you obviously there, you touched on women invest in real estate. I mentioned it at the top as well. Along with that, you're a co-author, of The Self-Managing Landlord. Can you tell us a bit more about those ventures and why and how you're trying to empower others in the space?
Well, apparently Amelia and I, the co-author of The Self-Managing Landlord and the co-founder of WIIRE, think everything's a two-person job. So we did both of those things together. But WIIRE is really special because we never started it as a business. We started it as, I'm doing real estate. I want to meet other people doing real estate who are young and passionate and doing these cool things and taking life by, the horns and creating a lifestyle that they want to live. And it's slowly morphed into an actual business. We now have team members across the US, hundreds of people in our WIIRE community, and we've done 10 sold out retreats across the US, but it still remains committed to helping women learn real estate so that they can become W-2 optional and live a life by their own design. That's really what we're after. None of us are here to own 1,000 units. We're here because we want to free up a Tuesday just because we can and go on vacation without having to ask for PTO.
Nice. I love it. And then what would you say is your kind of biggest advice to those people that want to make that leap then, that want to switch to W-2 versus full-time employee?
You have to remember you're the CEO. It sounds so cheesy, but I was so scrappy and did everything myself in chaos, disorganized, flying by the seat of my pants for 2 years. And the day that I realized, oh my gosh, I have paid, this is a real number, $8,500 to sort out my bookkeeping after a 2-year mess because I didn't do it and it was messy. I realized if I had just been organized from the beginning, I would be so much further and I'd be $8,500 richer. That was when I realized, okay, being organized, staying on top of how much you make, your legal entities, your organization, what's actually making you money is so huge. So write SOPs, get organized, and systemize and standardize things. Like even if it's tenant communication, instead of rewriting that message every time, write out one templated message, and Hospitable helps with that, and send it to those tenants. Like little things like that make such a huge difference. So stop working harder and try to work smarter. That would be my biggest advice.
Yeah. And would you say that's kind of also your biggest lesson learned as well during the process?
Absolutely. Like I said, I was like, I'll do everything that I can because I quit my job and I didn't really have an income. Real estate was my income. So I wanted every penny. I wanted to clean so I could make that cleaning income. I wanted to do all these different things, and it was really hard to grow out of that. But I realized that hiring and delegating is an investment to make me even more money. And so my biggest lesson learned was doing everything what I call quote unquote mom and pop style burns you in the end. You have to try to systemize and be smart from the beginning, even if you have just one property. So when you do scale, things are seamless and you're not in the middle of chaos.
That makes a lot of sense. So obviously we're recording this December 2nd. 2024 is coming towards an end. What's your resolution? Maybe 2025. Maybe you don't have a resolution yet. Maybe you don't set resolutions. But what are some of the goals maybe for Grace next year and beyond?
Funny you asked. Last night I was just writing in my journal and I wrote the word intentional. I think that I've, with both WIIRE and my real estate, gotten to a point where I know how to do the business. I know how to kind of make money and support myself. But how can I further hone in on the intentions of my business to honor, like, what do I actually want to do in life? One thing I want to do is go to Buenos Aires for 3 months in next fall. And so how can I set up my business to allow myself to do that? So I really want to focus even further and do things that I truly want to do in 2025.
Nice. I like that. I'm actually going to be in Buenos Aires in March, unfortunately, but only for like a week. So I'll let you know if there's any good restaurants I find. I'll send
Please do.
Recommendations your way. How about with WIIRE as well? And what's the thinking behind that, and how are you going to help more people in the community?
Yeah, we just started our official community membership. It's like a subscription at the end of 2024. And I think it helps more women just by being surrounded with people who are talking about the challenges or their successes is so incredible, especially when you're dealing with, again, hundreds of thousands of dollars. One little tidbit can save you a whole deal or save you from placing a bad tenant, which could be thousands of dollars. So we're also doing things like we're going to start offering bookkeeping services. We do a boot camp to teach you how to be CEO, but lots of fun projects to help people continue to build their real estate in an intentional, smart, and efficient way so that they can always stay focused on whatever it is that they actually want to do in life. Because again, most of us aren't here to be real estate investors. We're real estate investors so we can do other things.
Nice, I love it. And where do people go to find out more about that as well?
You can go to womeninvestinrealestate.com or follow us on Instagram at WIIRE with 2 I's .community. And I also have a free quiz at womeninvestinrealestate.com/quiz that can help you figure out where you might be losing money in your business and how to become CEO of your business. So that's a fun one.
Sweet, that's cool. Definitely recommend everyone go and check that out as well.
Yeah.
Sweet. Awesome. Well, I think that brings us to an end, Grace. Thank you so much for answering my questions today and telling everyone a bit more about your journey.
Thanks, Miles, and thanks to the Hospitable team.
Thanks for listening to my conversation with Grace today. If you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to like, follow, and share our podcast, and listen out for more episodes coming real soon.